Hey folks, welcome back to Stoic Relationships. Today, we're diving into a topic that has puzzled so many of us: silence. Silence can feel powerful, like a weapon we wield to protect ourselves or reclaim control. But let's be honest, silence doesn't always work the way we hope. It can leave us feeling stuck, misunderstood, or even more hurt. That's why we're exploring something different today, a strategy that's even better than silence. Yes, you heard me right. This is a game changer, and trust me, it's a strategy that most people never reveal. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation where someone hurt you deeply, and your first instinct was to go silent? Maybe you thought, I'll show them by not saying a word, or my silence will make them regret everything. But what happened next? Did they come running back, apologizing and begging for your forgiveness? Or did they move on, leaving you with a void that silence couldn't fill? For many of us, silence feels like a safe choice. But often, it keeps us trapped in our own emotions, replaying the hurt instead of truly moving forward. Now, don't get me wrong. Silence can be powerful. The Stoics believed in the value of holding your tongue, of speaking only when your words have purpose. But they also understood something equally important. Silence is a tool, not a solution. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That power comes not from shutting down, but from choosing when and how to express yourself. And that's exactly what today's strategy is all about. Here's the problem with silence. It often leaves too much room for interpretation. When you go silent, the other person may not even realize why. They might misinterpret your silence as indifference, weakness, or even guilt. Worse, they may use it as an excuse to shift the blame back onto you. Silence might feel like control, but in reality, it can leave you more vulnerable than ever. But don't worry, folks. We're not here to focus on what doesn't work. We're here to empower you with a better strategy, one that flips the script and puts the power back in your hands. Imagine replacing silence with something stronger: your truth. Speaking your truth isn't about confrontation or drama. It's about clarity, confidence, and closure. It's about reclaiming your voice and setting boundaries that no one can ignore. And the best part? It's a strategy they won't see coming. Throughout this video, we'll explore the many layers of this approach. We'll start by looking at the trap of silence, why it feels like a safe choice, but often leaves us stuck. Then we'll dive into the power of speaking your truth and how it can transform the way others see you and the way you see yourself. We'll compare silence used as a weapon versus as a gift. And I'll show you how to wield it wisely without falling into the common pitfalls. But that's not all. We'll also talk about thriving beyond their reach, what it really means to break free and build a life that doesn't revolve around their approval or regret. And for those moments when speaking your truth feels too heavy, we'll cover a bold move: burning the bridge with words, but doing it with grace and purpose. Trust me, folks, it's a move that's not about revenge, but about liberation. And of course, we can't forget the traps they might set for you along the way. Apologies that aren't genuine, closure that feels like a trap. It's all part of the game they play. But here's the thing. Your best response isn't silence. It's your comeback. A comeback so strong and authentic. It's the only thing they can't handle. That's your ultimate revenge. And it's what we're building toward. So, stick with me, folks. By the end of this video, you'll not only have a strategy better than silence, you'll have the tools to thrive beyond their reach, to speak your truth with confidence, and to walk away stronger than ever. And hey, while we're here, why not take a moment to reflect? Drop a comment below with this mantra: truth is power. Let's start the conversation and show the world that silence isn't our only option. All right, let's get started. Number 1. The trap of silence. The trap of silence. It sounds simple, even powerful, doesn't it? Silence often feels like a safe choice, especially when emotions run high. You think, if I just stay quiet, I'll avoid the conflict, or they'll come to realize their mistakes on their own. But here's the hard truth, folks. Silence can be a double-edged sword. While it might feel like you're in control, it often leaves you trapped, stuck in your own thoughts, and more disconnected than ever. Let me ask you something. Have you ever gone silent after a heated argument, hoping the other person would chase after you, apologize, or even beg for your forgiveness? Maybe at first, it felt empowering, like you had the upper hand. But as the hours turned into days, that silence started to weigh heavy. Instead of feeling strong, you felt isolated, unheard, or worse, forgotten. That's the trap. Silence can feel like armor, but often it's a cage. Now, don't get me wrong, silence isn't inherently bad. In fact, the Stoics often emphasized the value of holding your tongue. Marcus Aurelius himself wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Silence can be a tool for self-control and reflection. But here's where the problem lies. When silence becomes your only response, it leaves too much room for misinterpretation. The other person might not see your silence as strength. They might see it as indifference or even weakness. Let me share a quick story. A friend of mine, Sarah, found herself in a messy breakup. She decided to go completely silent, thinking it would make her ex realize what they'd lost. For weeks, she waited for the apology, the grand gesture, the realization. But instead, her ex moved on, and Sarah was left feeling even more hurt. The silence that she thought would bring closure only deepened her wounds. Why? Because silence didn't communicate her worth. It just created more distance. So, why do we fall into this trap? For one, silence feels like an easy way out. It avoids confrontation, spares us from saying things we might regret, and gives the illusion of control. But here's the reality. Silence isn't the same as resolution. It doesn't heal wounds or fix broken communication. Instead, it often leaves us replaying the same scenarios in our heads, stuck in a loop of what-ifs and if-onlys. The trap of silence isn't just about how others perceive it. It's also about what it does to you. When you stay silent, you suppress your truth. You hold back your voice, your perspective, and your emotions. Over time, that suppression turns into resentment. And resentment is a heavy burden to carry. Instead of moving forward, you remain anchored in the past, weighed down by everything you never said. Now, you might be wondering, if silence is a trap, then what's the alternative? Don't worry, we're going to cover that in the next sections. But for now, here's something to think about. Silence should be a choice, not a default. It's not about avoiding the hard conversations. It's about knowing when to speak and when to hold back. The key is balance. Silence can be powerful when used intentionally, but it loses its strength when it becomes a shield for unresolved emotions. So, here's your challenge, folks. Think about a time when you used silence as a response. Did it work the way you hoped, or did it leave you feeling stuck? Share your experience in the comments below with the mantra, "I choose clarity." Let's start a conversation about breaking free from the trap of silence. And hey, while you're reflecting on that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're just scratching the surface here, and there's so much more to uncover. In the next section, we'll dive into the power of speaking your truth, a strategy that doesn't just break the silence but reclaims your voice. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Number 2, The power of speaking your truth. Have you ever walked away from a conversation with your heart heavy, filled with words you wish you'd said? It's a feeling we all know too well. The frustration of leaving your truth unsaid can linger like an unhealed wound. It keeps you replaying moments in your head, wondering what could have been if only you'd spoken up. But here's the thing, every time you suppress your voice, you're not just avoiding conflict, you're giving away your power. Speaking your truth is not about confrontation or stirring up drama. It's about honoring yourself, acknowledging your feelings, and expressing them with clarity and confidence. The Stoics had a timeless piece of wisdom about this. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Never be overheard complaining, either improve or endure." It's a reminder that voicing your truth is not about blame. It's about building understanding, whether with yourself or others. Let's look at an example. Imagine a relationship where one person constantly feels neglected. They hope the other will eventually notice and make a change. But silence only reinforces the status quo. One day, they finally say, "I feel hurt when my efforts aren't acknowledged. Can we talk about this?" That moment of vulnerability changes everything. The conversation that follows might not be easy, but it's real, and that's what matters. When you speak your truth, you create opportunities for connection, growth, and healing. But let's face it, speaking your truth can be scary. What if they reject your words? What if they misunderstand or even retaliate? These fears are valid, but they're also the chains that keep you stuck. Every time you let fear dictate your silence, you're prioritizing their comfort over your authenticity. And that's a burden no one should carry. Now, let's talk about how speaking your truth impacts your self-worth. When you suppress your voice, you're essentially telling yourself that your feelings don't matter. Over time, this erodes your confidence and creates a cycle of self-doubt. On the other hand, every time you speak up, you're affirming your value, not just to others, but to yourself. It's a powerful shift that builds resilience and self-respect. Here's something else to consider. Speaking your truth doesn't mean you'll always get the response you hope for. And that's okay. The goal isn't to control how others react. It's to express yourself in a way that feels authentic and freeing. Even if they don't agree or understand, you've taken a step toward being true to yourself. And that's a victory worth celebrating. So how do you start practicing the power of speaking your truth? First, take a moment to reflect on what's really bothering you. Be honest with yourself about your feelings and what you need to say. Then, choose your words carefully. Instead of making accusations, focus on sharing your experience. For example, instead of saying, "You always ignore me," try, "I feel hurt when I don't feel acknowledged." This approach invites dialogue rather than defensiveness. Timing is also key. Don't try to have a meaningful conversation in the middle of a heated moment. Wait until emotions have settled and both of you can engage with clarity. And remember, it's okay to start small. You don't have to tackle your deepest fears all at once. Begin with something manageable, like expressing a boundary or sharing a feeling you've been holding back. Let me share another story. A friend of mine once told me about a moment that changed her life. She'd been in a toxic work environment where she felt undervalued and overlooked. One day, after yet another meeting where her ideas were ignored, she decided enough was enough. She walked into her boss's office and said, "I feel my contributions aren't being recognized, and it's affecting my work. How can we address this?" That conversation wasn't easy, but it led to a promotion and a renewed sense of purpose. More importantly, it taught her the power of advocating for herself. All right, folks, here's something for you to think about. When was the last time you spoke your truth? Did it feel liberating or terrifying? Or maybe a little of both? I want you to share your thoughts in the comments below with the mantra, "Truth empowers me." Let's create a space where speaking our truth becomes the norm, not the exception. And while we're here, don't forget to subscribe. In the next section, we'll tackle the dual nature of silence, how it can be both a weapon and a gift, depending on how you use it. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Stick around, because this journey is just getting started. Number 3. Silence as a weapon versus a gift. Have you ever found yourself sitting in silence after a heated argument, convinced that your silence would make them realize their mistake? It's a common scenario, isn't it? Silence can feel like power in the moment, a shield that protects you, or a weapon to strike back. But let's pause and ask, is your silence truly serving you, or is it working against you? Silence as a weapon is tempting. It can feel like the ultimate form of control, a way to make someone reflect on their actions without saying a word. You think, if I just stay silent, they'll feel the weight of what they did. But here's the catch. Silence as a weapon often creates more confusion than clarity. The other person might misinterpret your silence as apathy or even approval. Instead of drawing them closer, you risk pushing them further away. On the other hand, silence as a gift has an entirely different energy. This kind of silence isn't about withholding, it's about giving. It's about creating space for reflection, healing, and understanding. Think about the power of a quiet pause in the middle of a deep conversation. It's not an absence of words, it's an invitation for connection. The pause allows both you and the other person to process what's being said, making room for deeper understanding. The Stoics were masters of using silence as a gift. Seneca once wrote, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." Silence, when used intentionally, is an act of wisdom. It shows that you're in control of your emotions and that you value clarity over chaos. This kind of silence can diffuse tension, foster trust, and even strengthen relationships. Let's explore an example. Imagine you're in a meeting at work and a colleague interrupts you repeatedly. Instead of snapping back or retreating into silence as a form of protest, you take a deep breath and pause. That pause isn't weakness, it's strength. It signals that you're not reacting impulsively. When you finally speak, your words carry more weight because they're thoughtful, deliberate, and grounded. Now, let's flip the scenario. Imagine silence used as a weapon in a relationship. A person goes silent for days after an argument, refusing to explain why they're upset. The other person feels confused, frustrated, and even more distant. This kind of silence doesn't resolve issues. It magnifies them. It creates walls instead of bridges, leaving both parties feeling isolated. So, how do you ensure your silence becomes a gift rather than a weapon? The key lies in intention. Before you choose silence, ask yourself, what am I hoping to achieve? If your goal is to hurt, control, or manipulate, your silence is likely a weapon. But if your goal is to create space for clarity and understanding, your silence can be transformative. Here's a practical way to approach this. Next time you're in a conflict, instead of reacting immediately, pause and ask yourself whether your silence is serving you or the situation. If you need time to think, communicate that. A simple, "I need a moment to gather my thoughts," can turn a potentially damaging silence into a constructive one. It shows that you're intentional about your actions and respectful of the other person's perspective. It's also important to recognize when silence is no longer helpful. There are moments when staying silent perpetuates misunderstanding or allows someone to cross your boundaries. In those cases, speaking up becomes necessary. Silence should never replace honest communication. It should complement it. Use silence to gather your thoughts, then express them with clarity and confidence. Here's another perspective. Silence as a gift isn't just about what you don't say. It's also about how you listen. True silence creates space for the other person to share, reflect, and feel heard. By listening without interrupting, you're offering something far more valuable than words: your presence. All right, folks, here's something to reflect on. Think about a time when you used silence in a conflict or conversation. Did it serve as a bridge or a barrier? Share your thoughts in the comments below with the mantra, silence with intention. Let's explore how we can all use silence more wisely and effectively. And while you're here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The next section will guide you on how to thrive beyond their reach, turning your moments of reflection into actions that build strength and resilience. Trust me, this journey is just getting started. Number 4, the comeback. Thriving beyond their reach. Have you ever found yourself replaying the same scenarios in your head, stuck in a cycle of what-ifs and if-onlys? It's exhausting, isn't it? That endless loop of wondering how things could have gone differently keeps you tethered to the past. But here's the truth. Folks, the best way to break free isn't to wait for them to come back or even to dwell on what they did. It's to thrive beyond their reach, so completely that their actions or approval no longer define you. Thriving beyond their reach isn't about revenge or proving a point. It's about shifting the focus back to yourself. So often, when we're hurt, we pour all our energy into trying to understand or change the other person. We think, if only they could see my worth, or maybe I can make them regret their choices. But what does that really achieve? It keeps your power in their hands, leaving you in a position where your happiness is tied to their validation. Let me tell you something important. The most powerful comeback isn't about them. It's about you. It's about rebuilding your life in a way that makes you proud, excited, and fulfilled. When you thrive beyond their reach, you're not just moving on, you're moving up. You're creating a life so rich and meaningful that their absence becomes irrelevant. Now, let's talk about how you do this. First, focus on your growth. Think about all the energy you've been spending on them, the overthinking, the regret, the anger. What if you redirected that energy into something that builds you up? Maybe it's pursuing a passion you've put on hold, reconnecting with people who uplift you, or even trying something completely new. Growth isn't just about leaving them behind. It's about stepping into a version of yourself that you've always wanted to be. Second, set boundaries, not for them, but for yourself. Boundaries aren't just about saying no to others. They're about saying yes to yourself. Decide what you will and won't tolerate in your life moving forward. For example, if they've been breadcrumbing you with half-hearted apologies or attempts to stay in your life, ask yourself, is this what I truly deserve? Thriving beyond their reach means not letting them take up more space in your life than they deserve. Third, change the narrative. Instead of framing this experience as a loss, view it as an opportunity. What did you learn about yourself? What strengths did you discover? Often, it's in the moments of greatest pain that we find the greatest growth. Remember, folks, the Stoics believed that obstacles are opportunities in disguise. Marcus Aurelius said it best. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Your comeback starts with embracing the lesson, not the hurt. Here's a story to illustrate this. Imagine someone who's been through a tough breakup. At first, they're consumed by thoughts of what went wrong and what they could have done differently. But instead of staying in that space, they make a decision to focus on their own happiness. They start a fitness journey, join a new hobby group, and reconnect with old friends. Months later, they realize something incredible. They're no longer thinking about their ex, not because they've forgotten, but because their life has become so full that there's simply no room for regret. Another key to thriving is to redefine success. Success isn't about making them miss you or regret their choices. It's about building a life that feels good to you. It's about waking up in the morning with a sense of purpose, going to bed with a sense of peace, and filling your days with things that matter to you. When you do this, their opinion becomes background noise at best. All right, folks, here's a challenge for you. Think about one area of your life where you've been holding back, waiting for someone else to acknowledge your worth. What's one small step you can take today to reclaim that energy for yourself? Share it in the comments below with the mantra, I choose growth. Let's support each other in moving forward and thriving beyond the reach of those who no longer deserve our energy. And while you're reflecting on that, don't forget to subscribe. The next section is all about the power of words, specifically when and how to use them to rebuild your confidence and solidify your independence. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Let's keep this journey going together. Number 5. Burn the bridge with words. Hey folks, let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like you were holding onto a bridge that's doing more harm than good? Maybe it's a connection with someone who keeps dragging you back into the same toxic cycles. Or maybe it's the hope that if you just stay quiet, things will magically fix themselves. But here's the truth. Some bridges aren't meant to be crossed again. And the most empowering thing you can do is to burn them. Not with anger, but with clarity and purpose. Burning the bridge with words doesn't mean launching into a heated argument or throwing accusations left and right. It's not about drama. It's about closure. It's about saying what needs to be said, setting your boundaries, and walking away with your head held high. Words have power, folks, and when used intentionally, they can free you from the weight of unresolved emotions. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're standing on a shaky wooden bridge over a raging river. The bridge represents your connection to someone who's been draining your energy. Every time you try to step forward, the bridge wobbles and creaks under the weight of unmet expectations and unresolved conflicts. You're stuck. Halfway across, afraid to go forward, but unwilling to go back. Burning that bridge means lighting the match of truth, saying what you need to say, and letting it go up in flames. So you can finally move forward. But here's the catch. Burning the bridge isn't about destroying the other person. It's about freeing yourself. Too often, we hold on to connections out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of regret, fear of the unknown. But folks, staying on that shaky bridge doesn't keep you safe. It keeps you stuck. When you burn the bridge with words, you're not just walking away, you're reclaiming your power. Now, you might be wondering, what does burning the bridge with words actually look like? And it looks like having the courage to express your truth without expecting anything in return. It looks like saying, this isn't working for me anymore, or I can't keep pouring energy into something that doesn't pour back into me. It's about being honest, clear, and unapologetically yourself. Here's a story for you. A friend of mine once held onto a toxic friendship for years because she didn't know how to let go. Every time they argued, she'd retreat into silence, hoping the tension would blow over. But it never did. One day, she decided to have an honest conversation. She told her friend, I value the time we've shared, but this dynamic isn't healthy for me anymore. I need to step away. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't without pain, but it was freeing. That conversation burned the bridge, and for the first time in years, she felt light, unburdened by the weight of what had been. Now, burning the bridge doesn't always mean ending things completely. Sometimes it means redefining the relationship on your terms. It might mean saying, I can't be available to you in the same way anymore. Or, This is what I need if we're going to move forward. The key is to use your words to create clarity and set boundaries that protect your peace. All right, folks, let me leave you with this thought. Burning the bridge isn't about destruction. It's about liberation. It's about choosing yourself over the fear of what you might lose. And here's your mantra for this section. I let go. Write it in the comments below and share a moment when you used your words to create closure or set a boundary. Let's celebrate those moments of courage together. And hey, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. The next section is all about recognizing when apologies are traps disguised as closure. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. Stick around, folks, because this journey is only getting deeper. Number 6. Their apology is a trap, not closure. Have you ever received an apology that felt hollow? Like it was more about easing their guilt than addressing your pain? It's a tough pill to swallow, isn't it? You want to believe that their words mean something, that the apology is a doorway to healing. But here's the hard truth. Folks, sometimes an apology isn't closure, it's a trap. Let's face it, we're wired to want resolution. After all, closure feels like the final chapter in a messy story. But not all apologies are created equal. Some are genuine, heartfelt attempts to make amends. Others? They're a subtle way to pull you back into their orbit, keeping you stuck in a cycle of confusion and doubt. And that's where the trap lies. Their apology might sound like, "I'm sorry for hurting you," but what they're really saying is, "Let's move on," without actually addressing what went wrong. Here's the thing. A true apology comes with accountability. It doesn't just acknowledge the hurt, it takes responsibility for it. If their words are followed by excuses like, "But you misunderstood," or "I didn't mean to," then they're not owning their actions. They're shifting the focus away from what they did and onto how you reacted. And that's not closure. That's manipulation. Let me share a familiar scenario. Imagine someone who's broken your trust. They apologize, and for a moment, you feel hopeful. You think, maybe this is the start of something better. But as time goes on, nothing changes. They keep repeating the same patterns, and you realize their apology wasn't a promise to do better. It was a way to keep you from walking away. Sound familiar? That's the trap in action. Now, this isn't about being cynical. Not all apologies are traps, but it's important to recognize the difference between an apology that heals and one that harms. A genuine apology is backed by actions. It's consistent, intentional, and focused on rebuilding trust. A manipulative apology, on the other hand, is about control. It's about keeping you emotionally tethered without offering real change. So, how do you spot the difference? Pay attention to how their actions align with their words. Are they taking steps to repair the damage? Or are they just expecting you to move on because they said, "I'm sorry"? True closure comes when their behavior reflects their regret, not when their words temporarily soothe your pain. Here's another layer to consider. Sometimes, their apology isn't even about you. It's about their own guilt. They want to feel better about themselves, and an apology is their way of seeking forgiveness. Not because they want to fix things, but because they want to lighten their burden. It's a selfish motive disguised as an act of kindness. All right, folks, let's bring this closer to home. Have you ever felt worse after accepting an apology? Like instead of closure, it reopened wounds you were trying to heal? That's a sign that their apology wasn't for you. It was for them. And when you recognize that, you gain the clarity to step back and protect your peace. So what do you do when faced with a trap disguised as an apology? First, take your time. Don't feel pressured to forgive or move on immediately. Closure isn't something they give you. It's something you create for yourself. Second, Set boundaries. You have every right to say, "Thank you for your apology, but I need to see consistent actions before I can rebuild trust." And third, trust your instincts. If something about their apology feels off, it probably is. Now, here's your mantra for this section. I create closure. Drop it in the comments below and share a moment when you recognize the difference between a genuine apology and a manipulative one. Let's create a space where we can learn from each other and reclaim our power. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe. The next section is all about the ultimate comeback, the one move they can't handle. Trust me, it's a game changer. Stick around, because this journey is just getting better. Number 7. Your comeback is the only revenge they can't handle. Here's a thought. Folks, what if the greatest revenge isn't about making them feel regret or guilt? What if it's about living your life so fully, so authentically, that their opinion of you no longer matters? It's a powerful idea, isn't it? The truth is, the most effective comeback isn't about them. It's about reclaiming your life and thriving in ways they never expected. Think about it. When someone wrongs you, it's natural to feel anger, frustration, or even the urge to show them. But the problem with traditional revenge is that it keeps you tied to them. Every step you take, every decision you make in the name of revenge is still focused on them. And let's be honest, folks, why should they have that kind of power over your life? The most impactful revenge is the one that shifts the focus entirely back to you. Now, let me tell you a little secret. Your success, your growth, your happiness, these are the things they can't handle. Why? Because it means they no longer control the narrative. When you rise above the hurt and become stronger, they lose the power they thought they had over you. And that, my friends, is a comeback they never see coming. But let's make one thing clear. Your comeback isn't about pretending to be okay or masking your pain. It's about transforming it. It's about taking everything you've been through and using it as fuel to build a life you're proud of. Maybe that means pursuing a passion you've been neglecting, surrounding yourself with people who uplift you, or simply rediscovering the parts of yourself that you've forgotten. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine someone who's been through a devastating breakup. At first, they feel lost, questioning their worth, and wondering what they could have done differently. But instead of staying in that space, they decide to focus on themselves. They pick up a new hobby, rebuild their confidence, and reconnect with their goals. Months later, they're thriving, healthier, happier, and more fulfilled than ever. And their ex? They're left wondering how someone they underestimated became so unstoppable. That's the beauty of a true comeback. It's not loud or flashy. It's steady and undeniable. It's about doing the work quietly, away from the noise, and letting the results speak for themselves. The Stoics had a powerful perspective on this. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In other words, don't let their actions drag you down to their level. Rise above. Not for them, but for yourself. Now, you might be wondering, how do I start my comeback? It begins with letting go. Letting go of the need for their validation, their apology, or their acknowledgement. None of those things are necessary for your growth. In fact, holding on to them only holds you back. Your worth isn't defined by how they see you. It's defined by how you see yourself. And here's the most important part. Focus on what you can control. You can't control their actions, their opinions, or their reactions. But you can control how you respond. You can choose to invest in your dreams, nurture your relationships, and build a life that reflects your values. That's where your power lies. Folks, not in what they think of you, but in what you think of yourself. All right, let's make this personal. Take a moment and think about a time when you overcame something that felt impossible. What did you learn about yourself in that process? Write it in the comments below with the mantra, "I rise above." Let's celebrate those moments of strength and remind each other that true power comes from within. All right, folks, that wraps up today's video. Remember, your growth and happiness are the greatest comeback anyone can ever witness. Focus on building a life that feels true to you, and let your actions speak louder than words. If you found value in this journey, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more insights and tools to empower your relationships and yourself. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay strong, stay authentic, and keep thriving.